Hello everyone, welcome to the series of VMware vSphere. Over here, I can say VMware vSphere version 8 because we all are aware that version 7 is discontinued by VMware and we were in the middle. And now I have shown you that how to register for VMware vSphere version 8. So just add a note, guys. I say always again and again, don't run behind the version. The version may change, but the technology will remain same. The job of VMware vSphere is to perform a dedicated virtualization. Even tomorrow it will remain same. The version may change, but the concepts will remain same. Maybe some new add-ons will be there in the new version, and that I will highlight you. We will approach to this particular topic when and where it is required. Terms and terminologies may change, but the concept will remain same. So in this topic, we are going to discuss about the hot add of RAM, CPU, and hard disk drive. We will also practically do how we can extend the hard disk drive. So this lab we are going to perform on VMware vSphere 8. Quickly, I will be opening my browser. In the browser, I will type the link labs.hol.vmware.com. So guys, in this tutorial, we will be discussing about some theory concepts also about the hotend feature, and whatever we are going to theoretically discuss in this session, we will be justifying each and everything practically in the lab. So once this page is loaded, and one more thing, I will be giving you this link in the description box as well. And I have done the registration for VMware vSphere 8, which I have shown you few tutorials back. The same tutorial link I will be putting in the description box. So now, once the page is loaded, click on Login Register button, and then the username will be your registered email address. Enter, enter your password. Enter. Now there are lots of labs in the list. We know that our lab is 101. You will just type 101 and search for your lab. This is the lab on which we are working, right? Virtualization 101 lab. Click on Enroll Again button. Click on Start this lab. Click on Start lab. As we do in vSphere 7, we were extending the timing, right? Basically, by default, it is 1 hour 30 minutes, but you can extend up to 9 hour 30 minutes. So I will start extending it. And I will maximize my lab. Very first thing, what I'm going to do is I will open the browser. But before that, let me show you one thing. Click on this, open this Redmi TXT file. Similar to vSphere 7 Lab, you will be having all the credentials in this particular file, readme.txt on your desktop. You can see the username and password for esxi host, vCenter, Windows VMs, and all. The password is common for all, that is VMware one exclamation where VM is capital. Now I will open the browser over here and the default page will open for me, which is vCenter server appliance page. By default, the credentials are pre-filled. Click on login button. So guys, over here, you can see each and everything is same. 2 ESXi hosts are added. Tiny Linux machine is there. Tiny Linux 2 machine is there. Windows 10 machine is there. The very first thing what we are going to do is we will be creating a new virtual machine with the name Photon Linux. We have already created the machine in vSphere 7 lab. The same thing we are going to do over here. There is a small change in the hotend feature. I mean, the hotend feature will not change, but how to enable the hotend features for the CPU, there is a little change in vSphere 8 that I will show you over here. That is the reason I am repeating again. I will just, this is our data center, right? Virtual data center, right? Right click, see. Virtual data center concept I have explained in vSphere 7. Same, it is over here. I have right click on virtual data center and I will say new virtual machine. Click next. See, create a new virtual machine, click next. Virtual machine name, I will say Photon Linux. And you all know that we are going to mount the OS for this machine from the content library. I have explained you four different methods to mount the content library, which is client device, host device, data store, and content library. The three concepts I have already explained you. About the content library, I told you that it is a vast topic and I have kept a separate session. So we will be discussing after few session we will be discussing about content library. For now, we are creating a machine with the name Photon Linux and we are going to mount the ISO from the content library. Click next. Over here, expand this. You can, I am selecting ESXi1 because I am saying that over here that I will be running the Photon Linux machine for ESXi1A host. If you want ESXi2A, you can select ESXi2A host. It's up to you. Okay, click next. Now, you have to select the storage. The storage things I will be explaining you in the storage session. But for now, just select this option iSCSI storage. Click next. Compatibility. This again will be one session in our last. This last session will be on compatibility. Okay, compatibility topic. For now, say next. Guest operating system is going to be Linux OS family, and the guest OS version will be VMware Photon OS. Click next. Okay, we are keeping the default option where the CPU is 1, memory is 2 GB, the hard disk size is 16 GB. We will not change anything. Click next and click on finish button. Okay, you can see the VM Photon Linux is created. Now you will just right click on this virtual machine, right click on this virtual machine and click on edit setting. Over here we will be adding hotted feature for memory. Expand this, see, like this, click over here, it will expand. Okay, just drag a little down. You can see option memory hot plug. Check this box, enable. This you were doing on vSphere 7 also. But the CPU, when you will expand this, you used to get a hot add feature to enable the CPU hot add feature, right? It is not there over here. This is a minor change in vSphere 8. So where you will find this option, you just go over here in VM options, expand this CPU topology and drag down. See, you can find this option CPU hot plug. Just check this box, enable CPU hot add. Okay. Once you are done with this, click OK. Now we will mount the ISO image. So right click over here, click on edit setting. See, at once also I can do everything, but to explain you step by step, again and again I am right clicking edit setting. Okay, or else in one shot you can do it. See, this option was there below me. Now CD DVD drive, I have to mount the ISO. Just click over here and select the option content library ISO file. Once you do this, you will see this Photon OS over here. Click on OK. And earlier in vSphere 7, you used to have an option, a checkbox. You used to say just checkbox over here and used to get connected. You have to connect the hard disk, CD drive, right? But the option is not over here. So what you have to do, just expand this and say connected power on. Okay, and click on OK button. Once you are done with this, it's a time to power on your Photon Linux machine. What we did, we have enabled the hot add memory feature, hot add feature for the CPU. We have mounted the ISO file. Now right click, click on power and say power on. You can just click inside over here and you will get a console of the machine. We are not over here to learn the Linux installation or a Photon Linux installation. Straight away we'll proceed with the configuration. Enter, install. Just click the cursor inside, the mouse inside, and say enter. Installation has started for you now. Enter to accept. enter. Configure network automatically, not with the DHCP hostname. Okay, enter. Click next. Next. Host name it is asking you. Okay, we will keep the default host name. Next. It is asking you for the password, right? What password you will give for this machine. Next. It is asking you to confirm the root password. Next. Start the installation. All data on the selected disk will be lost. Yes, enter. The installation has started now. Meanwhile, it is installed. I will just take you over here to the vCenter and explain you something. See now, guys. Earlier we were having Tiny Linux 2, and Windows 10 machine which were given by default. Okay, but now we have installed one more machine, Photon Linux, and this machine that we have kept on ESXi 1, right? If you want to see the details of this machine, like where it is installed and everything, you can just see over here. See, just scroll down a little, and over here you can see that the host is ESXi1, which means that it is working on ESXi1. The storage is iSCSI storage. If you remember, we have given this storage, right? And the CPU was one. We haven't changed anything, right? By default, it was one CPU, 2 GB memory, and 16 GB hard disk. This is what it was given during the time of installation. The default was there, and we have kept that default only. We haven't changed. It was one CPU, 2 GB memory, and 16 GB hard disk. Let me show you over here as well. Click on edit setting. You can see this was the option, right? One CPU, memory, 16 GB hard disk. So basically we have created one Photon Linux machine. Let's see if the configuration is completed. It is asking you to boot. Press any key. Okay. So now it is into the login page. The first time we are going to log in with the root user and the password which we have set during the time of installation. And you can see you are into the login prompt now. It has allowed you to log in through your credentials. So guys, what is this? This is Photon Linux. Let me again open and tell you how you will come. This is vCenter server appliance, right? You are over here in the Photon Linux. What you will say? You can say launch web console or launch remote console. It is opening for you, right? And before we proceed, one more thing I would like to say over here. Okay, no worries, that I will show you later. I was about to introduce one term, but it is not the right time. Okay, just click on launch web console, and it is opening you the console of your Photon Linux. A small thing over here, we will see that the CLI, just give the command free. Okay, hit enter. When you say the command free, it is giving you your memory details. You can see the memory details over here. It is 2 GB. Just let me take you to the vCenter over here, and if you right click over here and go to edit settings, it is 2 GB memory, right? So when you give the command free on the Photon Linux CLI, it gives you the memory, that the memory is 2 GB. Okay. Now Moving on, we will give one more command to check the number of processors. Okay, and the command is nproc. Hit enter. It is saying one processor, right? Let me take you to the vCenter. See, the CPU is one, right? Everything is justified. We have given a command free on the CLI of the Photon Linux. It has given you the memory details, which is 2 GB. It is the same memory which we have allocated while creating a virtual machine for the Photon Linux. And the number of processors it is showing, that is number of CPU, it is showing as 1, which is the same which we have given during the time of creation of the machine. Okay, just we'll move out from here, and now what we are going to do is just come to the your vCenter machine over here, and over here in your Photon Linux machine, just right click and click on edit setting. You know this CPU is there, right? Just change the CPU from 1 to, okay, and there's a memory, right? Just change the memory from 2 GB to 3 GB. What we did, the CPU was 1, we changed it to 2, and the memory from 2 GB we have changed it to 3 GB. Click on OK. We have changed the CPU and the memory of the Photon Linux machine. Now coming to the virtual machine CLI, that is Photon Linux CLI. Okay, over here, stand control or delete. Close this window. Okay, fine, we'll close it, no problem. Again launch the machine. The machine is launched. Okay, what we are going to do, the command which we have used to check the memory and the CPU, the same command we will use it again over here. And just remember that since we have enabled the hot add feature in this Photon Linux machine, straight away we have changed the CPU and memory. We haven't power off it, allowed us to do that job. Okay, and let's verify that whether it is really changed. Now give the command free over here in the CLI of the Photon Linux, and you can compare it from the above. Over here the memory was 2 GB, now the memory is changed to 3 GB. And when you give the command nproc, you will see that earlier the processor was 1, the CPU was 1, now the CPU is changed to 2. You know why all this thing happened? Very first, it allow us to increase the CPU and memory when the machine was running in the production environment. The reason is you have enabled the hot add feature for the CPU and memory, and thereafter you can see that the same changes are reflected over here. Earlier when you have given the free command, it was giving you 2 GB memory, and after changing, it has practically proved that the memory is increased in the live environment without any downtime, without turning off the machine. You have done everything live. The memory you can increase, that is called a hot add memory feature. You can increase the CPU, that is called hot add CPU feature. Both these things you have achieved without any downtime. So this was the reason we have enabled the hot add feature while creating the virtual machine. When you increase the RAM or memory of your VM in life, that is in production environment, without powering off, without any downtime, the VM, it is called hot add. And when you do this job after power off, now what you did, you have run power off the machine, you haven't got any downtime, everything was done live. This is called hot add. The same job if you will do by turning off the machine, like let's say for example when you was creating a machine and if you haven't enabled the hot add feature, what you would have done, you would have turned off the machine, you would have increased the memory, increased the processor, and then this would have happened. But since we have done all this thing live, that's the reason it is called hot add feature. Now let's understand a small term, then again we will come over here in the practical and we will be justifying whatever we are going to discuss in theory now. So guys, we have seen about the hot add feature. So let's discuss something about vSphere hot add feature. See, hot add and hot plug are not turned on by default. We have seen that when we were creating a Photon Linux machine, at that time these features were not enabled. We have enabled them, right? So it need to be enabled at the time of launch. Now, if in case these features are not enabled when you are launching the virtual machine, and if the features are not enabled, then you have to power off the machine to enable this feature. And to achieve this feature, to take the benefits from the feature, one requirement is VMware tool must be installed. What is VMware tool? What are its benefits? What are the advantage of VMware tools? This everything we have discussed in our previous sessions, right? So I don't think that it need to be discussed over here again. But the important thing is the VMware tool feature must be enabled if you want to perform the hothead. And what are the important things you have to take care? Hothead and hot plug are not turned on by default. You have seen in Photon Linux we have enabled that, so it need to be enabled at the time of launch. Now, if it is not enabled at the time of VMware launch, then the machine must be power off to enable this. Let's justify this, that if the hothead feature is not enabled at the time of VM launch, we must power off the machine. This we will practically justify. So for doing that, we will go to our VMware hands-on lab. So guys, over here coming to vCenter server, just right click on your Windows 10 machine. This Windows 10 machine we have not created, right? This was pre-installed and not installed by you. This VMware has given them by default in their lab. Right click over here on Windows 10 machine and click on edit setting. See, since this machine was pre-installed, the problem is that it is visible over here. See, the CPU option, you cannot increase the CPU. It is grayed out, right? Even it is the same case with memory also. It is grayed out. You cannot enable. Why? Just expand this and you will see that this feature was not enabled during the time of launch. And one more thing, you cannot enable it right now. It is grayed out, right? You cannot enable it now. Similarly, if you will go to VM option and then if you will try to enable the CPU hothead feature, that will also not be allowed. Why? Because this particular feature will be enabled only when you are enabling this during the time of VM launch. So now what to do for this? So to perform this, the solution is very simple. As written in the slide, you have to power off the machine. So we have learned one thing, that whenever you create VM and not enable the hot plug feature during the time of VM creation, you won't be able to add RAM or CPU live, and not even you will be able to enable these features. Hothead won't be possible. Many people are not aware of this, that hothead and hot plug feature are not enabled by default. Since you are the subscriber of the new networks, you are learning something very unique. Hothead and hot plug features are not enabled by default. You can enable it but not live. You must power off to enable it. Enable it after power off. So what we are going to do is, just we will cancel this. Going to Windows 10, we will right click, okay, and now what we are going to do, you will say power off and power of the selected virtual machine. Yes, guys, just add a note that now if you will right click over here, you will say edit setting. You can see now you are able to increase or decrease it. But add a note that if you will do this now, this will not be called as hot add feature. It will be called as cold add feature. Okay. So why we have power off? Just to enable the VM launch and then move further with our lab, because this is required to do our further labs. So that is the reason I am enabling the feature. Since this machine was created by VM and this feature was not enabled during the time of launch, we have power off the machine, and now we will extend the memory and CPU. So what we are going to do now, if we will increase this memory or CPU over here, it is called cold add. we are not doing a lab on cold hat, we are learning hot hat features. So simply I will say memory and say enable. Okay. So what I did, I have enabled the hot plug feature, memory hot plug feature for Windows 10 machine. So guys, similarly, CPU also, I will say enable CPU hot add over here. Okay. So what I did, I have enabled the hot add CPU feature, memory hot plug feature, and I will say okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I will power on this machine. See, I have not increased the CPU or memory when the machine was off. What I did, I have only enabled the feature. I will increase the memory and CPU after turning on the machine to prove that the hot add features is possible over here also. The main concept was to show you that, to justify the statement that by default the hot add features are not enabled. It need to be enabled during the VM launch time, and if the feature is not enabled, then you cannot proceed with the hot add feature. It's mandatory, you have to power off the machine, and this is the reason we have power off the machine. After powering off the machine, we have enabled those features, and again now we will power on the machines. Click on power on. And now, before we proceed with the lab, there is one again a small theory which we will discuss, and then we will move towards the, what we can say is, we will justify the theory practically. So these are the terms basically, guys. Hot plug is generally used for RAM. We have seen that memory hot plug was the option which we enable. So hot plug is generally used for RAM. Hot add is generally used for CPU. Okay, and support for these hot features are highly dependent on your guest operating system, not on vSphere. Let's justify this statement that support for these hot features are highly dependent on your guest operating system, which means that we have seen in the Photon Linux machine that as soon as you have increased the memory, increased the RAM, the same thing was reflected when you have given the command to the CLI. Let's see whether the same thing happens with the Windows also or not. So guys, now you can see the machine is power on. Let's open this machine over here. This is our Windows 10 machine which we have power on. Okay, and going to this machine, before that let's see what is the resources which is being allocated to this machine. And you will see over here, just scroll down a little. When the VMware has created this Windows 10 machine, it has allocated one CPU, 2 GB memory, and 30 GB hard disk. Okay, I will just go into the console of Windows 10 over here, and then going over, I will go to the taskbar of this machine, and I will write, or else let's do one thing. We will open the web console. Okay, I will just right click on the taskbar over here, and I will go to task manager. Then over here I will click on performance. So you can see over here, this particular Windows 10 machine has one CPU and 2 GB memory, right? One CPU is allocated, so it has one CPU, and 2 GB memory is there for this particular machine. Let's perform a hot lab for this as well. Just to recall, you have enabled the hot add feature after powering off the machine, because during the time of launch, the hot add features were not enabled for Windows 10 machine. You haven't created this machine. This machine was created by VMware, so it was not enabled. But now we have enabled the hot add feature for the memory and CPU. So what you will do in Windows 10 machine, you will just right click over here, and then you will click on edit settings. Now you can see you are able to change it, right? The machine is power on. Since the hot features are enabled, you are able to change it. Change the CPU from 1 to 2. Okay, and change the memory from 2 GB to 3 GB and click OK. Now, when you will see over here, you can see that the CPU is changed from 1 to 2 and the memory is changed from 2 GB to 3 GB, right? Let's verify the same thing going to Windows 10 machine. Okay, close it and launch again. I will close this also, this is not required. Okay, I will launch again. Okay, now you have launched the machine. See one thing over here. Now, when you have done the changes over here, this machine was live, it was in production, right? We haven't turned off the machine to do the changes for the memory. We have changed from 1 CPU to 2 CPU, from 2 GB to 3 GB. Memory is changed. See, from 2 GB, the memory is changed to 3 GB. Right? But the CPU earlier was 1, when now it is showing 1 CPU. The CPU is not changed. This was not the case with Photon Linux. As soon as you have changed the CPU and memory, the same thing was reflected. We have given a free command. It has given you the memory change. The change of the memory was seen. You have given the nproc command. The CPU changes were seen. But in Windows 10 machine, you have just change the CPU, you have changed the memory, but in Windows 10 the memory is changed from 2 GB to 3 GB, but CPU is not changed. It was one CPU earlier, now also it is one CPU only. So you know why this change is not reflected. The memory is changed but the CPU is not changed. Why? Because support for hot features are highly dependent on guest operating system. I told you in the slide, right? And the same thing is justified practically, that support for hot features are highly dependent on guest operating system, not on vSphere. If it would be on vSphere, it has changed for your Photon Linux. It would have changed for Windows 10 as well, but it has not happened like this. What has happened over here? The guest operating system Photon Linux has changed the memory and CPU as it was changed on the vSphere, but this was not the case over here. In Windows 10, the memory change was reflected, but the CPU remains same. This justifies that the hot add features are highly dependent on guest operating system and it has nothing to do with the vSphere. So it means that Windows 10 machine doesn't support hot add feature of CPU. It support only hot add feature of memory. It doesn't support a hot add feature of CPU. Now it means you want to change the CPU in Windows 10, you need to restart Windows 10 machine. Now if you want to change the CPU, you have to restart. This justifies again that the hot add feature is highly dependent on the guest operating system. Your Photon Linux supports the hot add features completely, but Windows only support hot add memory feature, not the CPU. So what I will do, I will just restart this machine, Windows 10 machine. I'm going to restart now, and we will see if the changes are reflected or not. Let's restart this machine now. It's restarting now, and let's verify. Okay, guys. So again, what we are going to do is we will be opening the task manager. Just over here on the taskbar, and click on task manager. The task manager is open for you. Click on performance tab. And now over here, you can see that the CPU is changed from 1 to 2 and the memory was already changed. This justifies that the hot add features are highly dependent on guest operating system and has nothing to do with the vSphere. So the hot add memory feature is supported, but the hot add CPU feature is not supported by the Windows 10. Now the question will come to your mind, which operating systems will support hot add feature and which operating system will not support hot add feature. So to find this solution, what we have to do is you will go to VMware HCL site. You know that. just go to Google over here, and going to Google, type VMware space HCL hardware compatibility list. Okay, so click this link. So guys, over here we will be seeing each and everything whatever we have done in the lab, so that you will have an idea which all vendors or which all operating systems supports hot add of memory, hot add of CPU. So when you come over here on this page, VMware compatibility guide, you can see what are you looking for, right? From here, drag down menu, select guest OS. If you remember, we have done the Photon Linux on the VMware, right? So from the OS vendor, just say VMware, okay, and the virtual hardware, you will say hot add memory, okay, update and view result. You will see that the OS, Photon OS 5.0, 4.0, each and every version, 1.02, all the version of Photon support virtual hot add memory feature. Now, if you will see for hot add virtual CPU, update and view result, you will see that all the OS release of Photon do support hot add virtual CPU feature also. Now coming to Microsoft, we will see which all Microsoft versions, which all operating system will support hot CPU and hot memory features. So you will select the OS vendor Microsoft, and we will see hot add memory is supported by which all operating system. Click on update and view result. You will see that the memory feature is supported by Windows 11. We have justified it is supported by Windows 10 also. When we have added, when we have performed the hot add of the memory, it was straight away reflected, right? So it is there. Windows 10 also support Windows 8, Windows Server operating system. There are many. So almost I think all the operating system, Microsoft operating system, whether it is a client or a server, do support hot add memory feature. Let's see hot add CPU. And just add a note that in our lab, hot add CPU feature was not supported by Windows 10. Let's see over here. Click on update and view result for hot add CPU. We are checking. You will see that Windows Server do support this hot add virtual CPU feature, which means that if you want to increase the CPU of your Windows Server, or if you want to increase the memory, you can perform a hot add live. But when it comes to the Windows client machine, it doesn't support hot add memory, hot add CPU feature, but it do support hot add memory feature. So I believe that guys, this much is much more enough for your understanding of hot add CPU and hot add memory. So just to recall and memorize what all things we have done till now. So guys, we have seen how to perform the hot add of the CPU and the memory. We have learned that hot add and hot plug are not turned on by default, need to be enabled at the time of launch, and we have practically justified that the Photon Linux machine which we have created during the time of creation, during the time of launch, we have enabled the hot add features, and we were able to perform. We were able to increase the memory. We were able to increase the RAM without turning it off because the hot add feature was enabled. We were able to do so, but the Windows 10 machine was not created by us, and during the time of the launch, VMware has not enabled this feature. This is the reason it was not allowing us to increase the memory and CPU when the machine was power on. That is, we were not able to perform the hot add lab. But what we have seen that we have to turn off the machine to enable this feature. We enable this feature, and then we have power on the machine, and thereafter we were able to perform the hot add on this machine as well. And one of the requirement is VMware tool must be installed. Now these are the terms which we have seen. Hot plug is generally used for RAM, hot add is generally used for CPU. And to support these features, support for these hot add features are highly dependent on your guest operating system. It has nothing to do with a vSphere. We have justified this, that when we were performing a hot add on the Windows, we have seen that the memory was increased live, but for increasing the CPU increment was not reflected. We have to power off and power on the machine. That is, we have to perform a restart, and the changes were reflected. Finally, we have went to VMware hardware compatibility list page, and over there we have seen that which all operating system do support hot add features and which operating system do not support. So guys, that's all in this session. Just to add a note that we have only completed the first part in this session, that is hot add for RAM CPU. We haven't covered hard disk drive, right? Hot add for hard disk drive. This we are going to continue in our next session. So the next session we will be performing the hot extend of hard disk drive. Okay. So that's all, guys, in this session. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please subscribe it now and do share with your friend. Thanks for watching and see you in the next session.